The call from the stars. The Nadorian people had never known war. Their world, Nador, was a jewel of peace in the vastness of space, a planet of crystalline lakes and vibrant forests, where the sky shimmered with auroras each night. The Nadorians themselves stood barely 4 feet tall, with luminescent skin that reflected their emotions in gentle waves of color. They were known throughout nearby systems, not for military might or technological supremacy, but for their unparalleled skill in healing arts and their ability to cultivate life even in the harshest environments. For 10,000 years, they had lived in harmony with their world and with each other. They had no concept of weapons beyond simple tools for hunting and farming. Their cities were open, without walls or fortifications, sprawling organic structures that flowed with the natural contours of the land. When travelers from other worlds visited, they were welcomed with open arms, their differences celebrated rather than feared. The Nadorians believed in a simple truth, that kindness was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. That belief had served them well through millennia of peaceful existence, until the day the stars went dark. They came without warning or provocation, the warships of the Krezath Empire. Massive vessels carved from asteroid metal, their hulls scarred from countless battles, weapons bristling from every surface. The Krezath were conquerors, driven by an insatiable hunger for dominance and a belief that the strong were entitled to devour the weak. Their empire stretched across 17 star systems, built upon the bones of civilizations they had deemed unworthy of existence. And now they had come for Nador. The first attack destroyed the orbital observation platforms, simple devices the Nadorians used to monitor space weather and passing comets. The second wave struck the planet's 3 largest cities simultaneously, antimatter bombs reducing ancient crystal structures to dust in seconds. The Nadorians had no defenses, no shields, no weapons to fight back. They could only run, hide, and watch as their world burned. In desperation, the Nadorian Council sent emergency transmissions to the Galactic Concordat, the alliance of spacefaring civilizations that claimed to uphold peace and protect developing worlds. Their pleas echoed across subspace channels, begging for intervention, for mercy, for anyone to save them from extinction. The Concordat received their messages and chose to ignore them. In the grand halls of the Concordat Assembly on the artificial world of Nexus Prime, representatives from 100 species debated the Nadorian situation with clinical detachment. The admiral of the Vrexian fleet argued that military intervention would be costly and provide no strategic advantage. The Mercantile Guild of the Palaxis Confederation calculated that the Nadorians' healing knowledge, while valuable, was not worth the economic disruption that opposing the Krezath would cause. The elder of the Zithri Communion simply noted that weak species falling to stronger ones was the natural order of the cosmos. After 3 hours of discussion, the Concordat voted unanimously to send thoughts and sympathies to the Nadorian people, while maintaining a strict policy of non-intervention. The message was drafted, approved, and transmitted, though by then, there were few Nadorians left alive to receive it. In the burning ruins of what had once been the great library of Nadoria, the last surviving members of the council gathered. Their skin, once vibrant with color, now pulsed with the dull gray of despair. They knew the end had come, but in their final moments, Elder Luma, the oldest among them, remembered an old story, a legend passed down through generations. Long ago, before the Concordat existed, another species had reached for the stars, a species that the Concordat had later rejected and isolated, not because they were weak, but because they were too unpredictable, too dangerous. A species that, despite their violent past, had once offered protection to any who asked for it, regardless of their strength or what they could offer in return. Humans. Earth had not been seen in galactic affairs for over 80 standard years. After the Concordat had denied them membership, claiming their species was too prone to aggression and incompatible with galactic harmony, humanity had retreated behind the borders of their solar system. Some said they had destroyed themselves in yet another war. Others believed they had simply accepted their place and chosen isolation over rejection. But Elder Lumi remembered something different, a promise made by the last human ambassador before Earth cut communications with the wider galaxy. "You fear us because you do not understand us. You see our capacity for violence and mistake it for our nature. But remember this, we fight hardest not for ourselves, but for those who cannot fight. And should the day come when the weak cry out and find no answer, call on Earth. We will be listening." With trembling hands, Elder Lumi accessed an ancient communication protocol, one not monitored by the Concordat, and sent a final message into the darkness of space. It was short, simple, and contained no requests for specific aid, just the truth. "We are the Nidorians. We are dying. The Krezath kill us. The Concordat watches. We are sorry to disturb your silence." The message traveled through old hyperspace relays, bouncing along forgotten routes, passing through systems where humanity's name had been all but forgotten. It crossed the void between stars, traversed the empty buffer zone the Concordat had established around Sol, and finally reached its destination, a small, unassuming satellite orbiting the gas giant Jupiter. For 20 seconds, nothing happened. Then, deep within Earth's moon, in a chamber carved from lunar bedrock 2 miles beneath the surface, an alarm sounded for the first time in 80 years. General Area Chen, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, had been preparing for this moment her entire life. 3 generations of Chen women before her had held the same position, maintaining constant vigilance while the rest of humanity built, prepared, and waited. When the signal came, she didn't need to read the full message. The alarm itself was enough. Someone had called for help, and this time, Earth would answer. She spoke a single command into the quantum-encrypted communication network that linked Earth's hidden military installations. Lazarus Protocol. Authorization, Chen Alpha 70. Commence awakening. Across the solar system, lights flickered to life in facilities that had appeared dormant for decades. On Mars, deep beneath the red deserts, manufacturing plants began producing ammunition and supplies at maximum capacity. In the asteroid belt, mining drones reactivated, harvesting resources to feed the war machine. Within the storms of Jupiter, hidden shipyards unveiled vessels that had been built in secret, weapons systems testing and calibrating in perfect silence. And on Earth itself, in cities and towns across every continent, men and women who had lived ordinary lives as teachers, engineers, artists, and farmers received the call they had trained for since childhood. They kissed their families goodbye, picked up pre-packed bags, and made their way to designated assembly points, where suborbital transports waited to carry them to their assigned posts. There were no grand speeches, no declarations of war, no public announcements. Humanity had learned long ago that words meant nothing without action. Instead, there was only the quiet efficiency of a species that had spent nearly a century preparing for this exact moment. In low Earth orbit, the first ships of the Liberation Fleet emerged from their camouflaged hangars. They were unlike any vessels the galaxy had seen before, not because humanity had discovered new physical principles, but because they had refined existing ones to deadly perfection. The ships were angular, black as the void itself, their surfaces covered in metamaterials that absorbed rather than reflected scanner beams. They carried no identifying markers, no national flags or symbols, only a single universal emblem, a clenched fist protecting a small flame. Admiral James Harrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Nemesis, watching as his fleet assembled. 87 ships, crewed by the best Earth had to offer. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come, but would fight with everything they had now that it had. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his XO announced. "Quantum drives charged and aligned. Weapons systems hot. The Archangel mechs are secured in drop pods, and the Ghost Division is aboard and prepped for ground assault." Harrison nodded, his expression grim but resolute. He had reviewed the intelligence gathered by Earth's hidden network of spy satellites and probes. He knew what awaited them at Nador, the Krezeth fleet, nearly 300 ships strong, designed for brute force rather than precision. They would outnumber his forces almost 4-1. It didn't matter. The Krezeth had never faced humans before. "Set course for the Nador system," he ordered. "Maximum speed. And send a message to the Nadorians, if any still live to hear it." "What message, sir?" Harrison's eyes narrowed as he looked out at the stars, each one potentially harboring worlds like Nador, peaceful species at the mercy of predators, because the so-called guardians of the galaxy had decided their lives weren't worth saving. "Tell them humanity is coming, and we bring with us the end of their nightmares." The quantum drives of the Liberation Fleet engaged simultaneously, tearing holes in the fabric of space-time. The ships disappeared from Sol in flashes of blue-white light, leaving behind only silence and the promise of return. As the fleet traveled through the quantum corridor, the soldiers aboard prepared for battle in their own ways. Some cleaned their weapons with methodical precision. Others meditated or prayed. Many reviewed the limited information available on Nadorian physiology and culture, knowing that rescuing survivors would be as important as defeating the enemy. In the secure communications hub of the Nemesis, intelligence officers intercepted and decoded transmissions from across the galaxy. The Concordat was in chaos, having detected the sudden activation of Earth's military forces. Emergency sessions had been called. Threats were being made. Defensive fleets were scrambling to protect key worlds, not from the Krezeth, but from the humans who had awakened from their long silence. Admiral Harrison didn't care. Let them fear. Let them wonder where humanity would strike. Let them feel, for the first time, what it was like to be helpless in the face of an approaching storm. Because humanity was no longer playing by the galaxy's rules. They had watched and waited for 80 years as the Concordat preached peace while allowing atrocities. They had built their strength in secret while the galaxy convinced itself that Earth had faded into insignificance. Now the reckoning had come, and it would begin at Nador. Wrath of the Forgotten. The Krezeth commander, Warlord Drezak, stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Merciless Triumph, and watched with satisfaction as his forces systematically eradicated another Nadorian settlement. He had conquered 17 worlds before this one, but few had given him such pleasure. There was something particularly gratifying about crushing a species that refused to even attempt resistance. It confirmed his deepest belief that the universe belonged to the strong, and that mercy was a defect to be purged from the galaxy. "Warlord," his sensor officer called, voice tight with sudden concern. "We're detecting quantum distortions at the edge of the system. Multiple signatures, not matching any known Concordat patterns." Drezak frowned. The Concordat had already made their position clear. They would not interfere with what they euphemistically called the Krezeth pacification of Nador. No other power in this sector had quantum jump capability. Perhaps reinforcements from the Imperial fleet had arrived early. "Put it on screen," he ordered, "and alert the fleet to maintain battle readiness." The main view screen flickered, showing the empty space at the system's edge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to tear open as 87 quantum ruptures appeared simultaneously. From each emerged a ship unlike any Drezak had seen in his centuries of warfare. Angular, black, and deadly in their silent precision. Before he could issue a command, his communication officer shouted in panic. "Incoming transmission. It's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." "Let me hear it," Drezak growled. A human voice, cold and implacable, filled the command deck. "Krezeth forces. This is Admiral James Harrison of Earth's Liberation Fleet. You have committed genocide against the peaceful Nadorian people. Your lives are forfeit. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy. There will only be justice." The transmission cut off, and in the silence that followed, Drezak began to laugh. Earth, the humans, the species that had hidden behind their star for nearly a century after being rejected by the Concordat, What threat could they possibly pose to the might of the Krezath Empire? "Battle stations," he ordered, still chuckling. "Show these humans what happens when they challenge their betters. All ships, advance and destroy." The Krezath fleet moved to engage, 293 warships against 87 human vessels. The numbers seemed to guarantee victory, and then the humans opened fire. The first volley came not from conventional weapons, but from devices the humans called reality anchors, quantum-locked fields that temporarily suspended the laws of physics within a defined area. When they struck the lead Krezath ships, the fusion reactors powering those vessels suddenly found themselves operating in a space where nuclear forces behaved unpredictably. 27 Krezath destroyers detonated in silent, brilliant flashes as their power cores collapsed. The Krezath responded with a barrage of plasma torpedoes, only to watch in disbelief as the human ships seemed to flicker and shift, the torpedoes passing harmlessly through the space where they had been moments before. Not cloaking technology or shields, but something else, quantum displacement drives, that allowed the human vessels to partially exist in multiple positions simultaneously. "Impossible," Drezek whispered as his tactical display showed Krezath ships being systematically destroyed by weapons that his sensors couldn't even properly register. No species could have developed such technology in isolation. But the humans had not spent their years of exile idly. Denied access to the galaxy, they had turned their legendary innovation inward, developing technologies that didn't just extend the boundaries of known science. They shattered them. As the space battle raged, smaller craft detached from the human fleet, dropships carrying the elite soldiers of Earth's Ghost Division. They slipped through the chaos of battle, their hulls coated in a metamaterial that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation, rendering them effectively invisible to Krezath sensors. On the surface of Nador, in the ruins of cities and the ashes of forests, the remnants of the Nadorian people huddled in hiding. Their numbers had been reduced from billions to mere thousands in the weeks of Krezath pacification. Those who survived did so by hiding in natural cave systems or the few underground facilities their peaceful society had constructed for research rather than shelter. In one such cave, Elder Lumi and 38 other Nadorians, all that remained of their once great council, had gathered for what they believed would be their final communion. Their skin pulsed with the deep blue of morning as they joined hands, preparing to sing the ancient songs that would guide their spirits to rejoin the cosmic harmony. The sound that interrupted their death ritual was not the heavy tread of Krezath soldiers or the whine of disintegrator rifles. It was a soft hiss, like air escaping from a sealed chamber. The cave entrance, partially collapsed during earlier bombardments, suddenly disintegrated into fine dust, revealing armored figures silhouetted against the red glow of fires still burning on the surface. The Nadorians trembled, their skin shifting to the pale yellow of terror. But what stepped through the opening was not a Krezath warrior. It was a human woman, her combat armor matte black and form-fitting, a helmet with an opaque faceplate concealing her features. She removed the helmet with a quick motion, revealing dark skin and eyes that held both steel and compassion. "I am Captain Maya Okafor of Earth's Ghost Division," she said, her voice gentle despite the weapon she carried. "We received your distress call. We've come to evacuate survivors and eliminate the Krezath threat. You're safe now." Elder Lumi stared in disbelief, her skin shifting to a confused swirl of yellow fear and tentative green hope. "Earth heard us. You came for us." Captain Okafor knelt to meet the elder's eyes. "We made a promise long ago. The weak will not cry out alone while humanity has the strength to answer." Throughout what remained of Nadorian settlements, similar scenes played out as Ghost Division soldiers located and secured survivors. They moved with precision that bordered on prescience, arriving moments before Krezath patrols, eliminating threats with silent efficiency, and evacuating Nadorians to fortified extraction points where medical teams waited with supplies specifically designed for Nadorian physiology. In orbit, the battle had transformed from a conflict into an execution. The The reality anchors had disabled nearly half the Krezath fleet in the opening minutes. What followed was a demonstration of warfare so advanced that the Krezath had no frame of reference to understand what was happening to them. Human warships phased in and out of normal space, appearing inside the defensive perimeters of Krezath vessels to deliver devastating point-blank attacks before shifting away. Autonomous combat drones swarmed like metallic insects, attaching to enemy ships and boring through hulls to target critical systems. And through it all, the human vessels moved with uncanny coordination, as though guided by a single mind. On the bridge of the merciless Triumph, Warlord Drizak watched his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled. 200 ships lost in less than an hour, with not a single confirmed human casualty. It defied everything he had been taught about warfare, about the natural order of strength and dominance. "Send the signal," he ordered, his voice hoarse with rage and dawning fear. "Summon the Imperial fleet. All of it." His communication officer turned, face ashen. "We can't, Warlord. All quantum comms have been blocked by unknown means. We're cut off." Drizak roared in fury, drawing his ceremonial blade, the same weapon he had used to execute the leaders of 17 conquered worlds. "Then we die as Krezath warriors. Target their flagship with everything we have left. If we must fall, we will take their commander with us." The merciless Triumph's remaining weapons focused on the Nemesis, pouring enough firepower to shatter a small moon into the human flagship. For a moment, it seemed the barrage might actually penetrate the vessel's defenses, until the space between the ships shimmered and the energy dissipated into nothingness, absorbed by what appeared to be a localized vacuum fluctuation. On the Nemesis, Admiral Harrison watched impassively as the Krezath flagship exhausted its arsenal against the quantum shield. When the barrage finally ceased, he gave a single nod to his weapons officer. "End it." A single projectile, little more than a specialized drone, launched from the Nemesis. It crossed the space between the ships in microseconds, phasing directly through the Krezath vessel's hull using the same quantum displacement technology that protected the human fleet. Once inside the enemy flagship, it detonated not with a conventional explosion, but with a contained singularity, a miniature black hole that existed for mere seconds, long enough to consume the ship's command deck and everyone on it before evaporating in a burst of Hawking radiation. Warlord Drizak had just enough time to realize that everything he believed about strength and weakness had been a lie before he was compressed into elemental particles and scattered across the void. With their flagship destroyed and their leadership eliminated, the remaining Krezath vessels attempted to flee. They found their quantum drives inexplicably offline, their conventional engines responding sluggishly, as if the very fabric of space had turned against them. One by one, they were hunted down and neutralized by the human fleet, not always destroyed, but disabled, their crews captured and secured for later justice. 3 hours after humanity arrived in the Nadir system, the battle was over. No Krezath ship remained operational. No Krezath soldier remained free on the planet's surface. The cost to the human forces had been minimal. 12 soldiers wounded in ground operations, 3 ships damaged but repairable. The aftermath began immediately. Hospital ships descended to Nadir's surface, bringing medical technology specifically designed for Nadorian physiology. Engineering corps deployed restoration drones to clear rubble, purify water sources contaminated by Krezath weapons, and begin the long process of healing the wounded land. In what had once been the central plaza of Nadir's capital city, Admiral Harrison met with Elder Lumi and the surviving members of the Nadorian Council. They stood amid ruins, but already human technology was at work. Nanite swarms reconstructing shattered crystal structures. Atmospheric processors clearing the smoke and ash from the air. Seed banks deploying genetically enhanced versions of native plants that would grow at accelerated rates to restore the devastated ecosystems. "We cannot repay this debt," Elder Lumi said, her skin now glowing with the deep purple of gratitude. "You have saved not just our lives, but our entire species." Admiral Harrison shook his head. "There is no debt. This is not a transaction. This is humanity fulfilling its purpose. And what is that purpose? Asked another elder, skin pulsing with curious blue. To ensure that in this galaxy, strength serves justice, not the other way around. Harrison's gaze turned upward, to the stars where his fleet still orbited. We withdrew from galactic affairs because the Concordat feared what we might become. In our absence, they allowed predators like the Krezeth to flourish. That ends today. Across the galaxy, word of what had happened at Nador spread like wildfire, despite the Concordat's desperate attempts to control the narrative. Quantum communications networks buzzed with fragmented reports, sensor logs, and terrified testimonies from Krezeth survivors. In the Grand Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, the Concordat leadership convened an emergency session. The same representatives who had dismissed the Nadorians' pleas now argued violently about how to respond to humanity's return. "We must negotiate," insisted the elder of the Zithri communion, fear evident in his normally impassive features. "Offer them membership in the Concordat, recognition, whatever they want." "Negotiate?" scoffed the admiral of the Phyrexian fleet. "With a species that just destroyed nearly 300 warships in 3 hours, we must mobilize every fighting vessel we have, establish a containment perimeter around Sol and what?" interrupted the Mercantile Guild representative. "Provoke them further. The humans aren't expanding their territory or demanding resources. They intervened to stop a genocide we chose to ignore. Any military action against them would only confirm their darkest suspicions about us." The debate raged on, but was suddenly silenced by the appearance of a holographic projection in the center of the chamber, a simple image of a clenched fist protecting a small flame, the emblem of humanity's liberation fleet. A voice echoed through the hall, calm but resolute. "Representatives of the Galactic Concordat. This is General Area Chen, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. Let me be clear about our intentions. We have not returned to seek revenge for your rejection. We have not come to conquer or control. We have come because you failed in your most sacred duty, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Liberation Fleet is currently en route to 17 systems, where oppression and genocide continue unchallenged. We will free the enslaved, restore the displaced, and bring justice to the oppressors. We do not seek your permission or approval. However, know this: any attempt to interfere with our operations will be met with the full force of Earth's military might. The same technology that destroyed the Krezeth fleet can be deployed against any who stand in the way of justice. We do not wish for conflict with the Concordat, but we will no longer stand silent while the innocent suffer. You feared our capacity for violence. Now witness our capacity for protection." That is all. The projection vanished, leaving the Concordat representatives in stunned silence. They had spent decades believing they had contained the human threat by isolating Earth. Now they realized the terrible truth. Humanity had not been hiding in shame or weakness. They had been preparing, watching, waiting for the moment when they would be needed most. And now that moment had come. The galaxy was about to change forever. Because when the weak cried out, humanity had answered. And their answer was annihilation for the wicked, protection for the innocent, and a promise written in the light of burning warships. Never again would the predators of the galaxy hunt unchallenged. Never again would peaceful worlds burn while the powerful looked away. Never again would the cry of the helpless go unanswered. Humanity had returned, and they brought with them not just vengeance, but justice.